Hi, my name is Andreas Grabner, CNCF Ambassador and DevRel at the CNCF Project Captain. I'm also the Global DevRel Lead at Dynatrace. I gave this talk at KCD Munich in July 2023. The session was not recorded, but I asked the organizers if it's okay to record and then publish it on YouTube. The only thing that I've changed is really the title based on feedback. So it's now called Platform Engineering Opportunity, the why, the MVP, the community, and measuring success with observability. If you want to follow up with me later on, you see all the links here, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, and also the open source projects that I'm very passionate about, whether it's Captain, Open Telemetry, or Open Feature. But let's get started. The first question that probably comes to mind, why is everybody talking about platform engineering? And also, why do we need yet another talk about platform engineering? These are just the first search results that I found when I Googled for it. So you can see pretty much everybody these days is talking about it, whether it's marketing-wise, a hype, or whether it's really substantial information. So a lot of stuff out there. So why is everybody talking about platform engineering? I think the reason is because you build it, you run it, doesn't scale. Now you build it, you run it was the famous quote from Mr. Vogels from AWS many years ago, when he explained how at AWS software was built, deployed, and operated. What we learned, though, is that this doesn't work for every team. It doesn't work especially for every organization that grows. Because you build it, you run it means every developer in that team, every role, every person needs to become an expert in all the different tools, from building, from testing, from deploying, from infrastructure as code, from observability, from runbook automation. Everybody needs to be an expert in many different tools. And this simply doesn't scale as you scale your organization. I also have a podcast here if you want to listen to more of these thoughts on why you build it, you run it, really reaches the limits as your organization crosses about the 50 to the 100 engineers. Second thing is, right, one of the solutions to the problem would be we just hire 10x software engineers. These are the mythical creatures that really know everything inside out, every single tool. Unfortunately, some of them may exist, but it's not an approach to scale an organization. It's not an approach to just hire 10x engineers, because as you can also see here from one of the blog posts here from Ari-Pekka Kopponen, head of platform at Swarmia, the 10x engineer is going to fail in the long run if you are betting on just hiring these mythical creatures. I see, though, the opportunity of platform engineering evolving, because platform engineering really tries to solve that scalability issue and the issue that we don't have people that can really be a master of everything from dev to ops. So the opportunity for platform engineering is really around enabling 10x organizations by simplifying app delivery. So instead of hiring 10x engineers, platform engineering should make app delivery simpler. This is a great opportunity to enable 10x organizations. Now, let me dig a little bit deeper here. First of all, I don't come up with this thing, right? I'm also just a messenger to all this, but the numbers confirm. State of DevOps report of this year, 2023, was focused on platform engineering. As you can see here, that platform engineering, so organizations that filled out that survey, that went down the path of platform engineering, see a 66% increase in developer velocity. Now, what led to the creation of platform engineering teams? You can see for yourself, the increased speed of delivery, the need to scale up, and engineers were just simply taking on too much work. This was leading to the creation of platform engineering teams. What was the benefits that people were hoping for and that they actually got? Exactly the stuff that we talked about before. System reliability, first of all, which is a great side benefit, efficiency and productivity of work, and speed up of delivery time. I can highly recommend checking out the report, especially if you need to argue why platform engineering is something your organization should look into. So what are platform engineering teams now? Platform engineering teams are building internal developer platforms, or IDP for short. Now, before you start and running off and say we need to build our new platform, do me a favor, put your product manager hat on. Because really what you first need to do is you need to understand what type of platform you should really build. And in order for that, you need to figure out and understand the users of your platform, which are your internal development teams. So figure out the demands, the needs, and what they want. And once you know that, you can then easier decide what to buy and what to build. Because believe me, there's a lot of stuff already built out there. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to build all of yourself. There's some things that might be bought. Right? So start with understanding your internal users, the customers, the users of your platform that you're building, and then try to figure out what is there existing and what needs to be built, because maybe you have some special demands in your organization that are simply not available on the market. So to sum it up, an IDP, an internal development platform, is a product that enables software engineers for self-service by providing so-called golden path recommended ways for all relevant use cases, from development, building, testing, securing, documenting, deploying, operating, supporting, and retiring software. Matching, and this is very important, matching the preferred abstraction and skill set of your organization. Every organization is different, and therefore every platform will look different. In the end, if we do this right, it results in increased productivity and hopefully also happiness of app teams. Now, I know it's a lot of maybe lofty words, but I think it's a very true thing. If you are designing an IDP and you see it as an internal product, then this should be the guiding principle. It should enable people for self-service by providing golden paths or templates on how to do certain things around the important use cases of software lifecycle management. It should be usable for the people that you have in your organization, because every organization is different. You have different engineers in different types of industries and different types of organizations, so make it matching. But in the end, if we do it right, we will see increased productivity and happiness. Now, keep it simple is a good mantra. Start with an MVP, a minimal viable product that may look like this. So what I've actually put together, right? It could be a simple SharePoint page or whatever wiki you're using. You can see here, welcome to our company's internal development platform. It's a friendly platform, in my case, Habidere, that's Austrian for pleased to meet you. And when you do your homework and you actually, talk with your internal users, and they will tell you what use cases they have, then maybe you end up with templates for the 3 major use cases. Maybe your organization wants to build websites, maybe some serverless functions, maybe some teams wants to create an app. And for these use cases, the best way to get started is just documenting it on how to get a public website up. Maybe you already have an approved web hoster for your company and just give them a template that is approved by the organization. For serverless functions, maybe give them again a template that they can work on with all of the boilerplating around it, the infrastructure as code on how to deploy it and the pipelines. And also for an app, there's many existing frameworks out there. I'm sure you have stuff in your organization also already built. Just provide it in a simple way as a description. Don't forget about getting feedback. This is why proposing new use cases should also be part of your first MVP. If you forget something, if something doesn't work, then get the feedback from users on new use cases or things on how to improve these existing use cases. So MVP. Now, as you add more use cases, the platform will evolve in something more that may look like this. So some of the screenshots we have taken internally in our organization. One of the key components that I see a lot now in organizations is using developer portals, like providing a UI for people to start with. Backstage and others out there are prominent platforms or developer portals. So start with a template, for instance, in Backstage. Once you have the template that is creating your repository, then the engineers only need to add the code to the already filled out template, which is great. Just make it easier for them instead of everybody having to write the boilerplate code, their pipelines and everything else. Just give them a template so that they can focus on the business code. Once they commit and push the changes, then you may use tools like Argo, Flux, or whatever else you have that does the GitOps magic to then deploy it. And obviously make sure that everything you do is observable. Everything your tools are doing, like in this case, Backstage, Git, Argo, everything is observed what they are doing. And also the apps that are deployed, the services that are deployed, they also have to be observable. So if everything actually works as expected. Now, where do we start? If you go down that path, where do you start? Kubernetes is probably at the core of the platforms, right? I mean, I am in the capacity of a CNCF Ambassador, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, with Kubernetes as the biggest project. Kelsey Hightower years ago said Kubernetes is a platform for building platforms. It's a better place to start, but not the end game. But fast forward till end of last year, where the CNCF put out the last annual survey, we saw that Kubernetes is really taking off, and not just for application workloads, but really where it's taking off is the auxiliary workloads. That means we have seen a 211% increase in deployments of exactly the tools that make up modern day platforms. So just some of the logos, whether it's Harbor, Argo, Flux, Backstage, Crossplane, Kafka, Captain, Open Feature, and so on. These are the tools that are currently dominating the deployments on Kubernetes, because Kubernetes is becoming the core of the platform, and these tools make the rest of the platform. Now, entering this community, if you're fresh to all of this, it can feel extremely overwhelming. I was lucky enough to be at KubeCon in Amsterdam this year with 12,000 other attendees, 56% of them first-time visitors, which tells us a lot that a lot of people coming into this space. Now, back then, we had 159 CNCF projects. That was back in May. Now, at the time of the recording, we already passed the 160 projects. So if you go into this space and you're completely new, you're probably completely overwhelmed. What is this? What is this community? What do I choose from one of these 160 plus projects? I know it's very hard, but first of all, you're not alone. There's a lot of existing communities. There's a lot of organizations. A lot of people look at Spotify, for instance. Spotify is a great engineering blog where they put out how they are doing platform engineering. Also, there's the platform engineering community under platformengineering.org. Great content, great community. Check it out. So you're not alone. Join the existing communities. Also, join the efforts on defining reference architectures. So what we see currently, right, as you start building your platform, remember, a platform is a product. A product will be used by users, and they want to do certain things with you. So what you always need to first think about, what are the use cases that you really want to automate and provide as a self-service to your end users? Think about this. And then try to figure out how to implement it. Do you buy? Do you build? If you build, what are the components that you build your platform from? So this here is a reference architecture that I've been working with some of our users. And I also know that the CNCF community itself, they also have a working group, a platform working group that I can highly recommend you check out. They have regular meetings. They're also currently working on a maturity model, and they also have a reference architecture. But do me a favor, if you go down that path, always start from the top. Who are your end users? What are the use cases? And then how do you build it? And check out everything that the community is already doing around reference architectures. You don't have to start from scratch. Right? So remember, you don't need to start from scratch, because besides all of these reference architectures, there's also existing tools out there and organizations that provide you and give you a head start. I just put 2 up here, but there's many, many others out there. So again, you don't have to build everything from scratch. People have done this already for you to get a head start. Now, whatever type of platform you build, you will be judged by its success in the end. If you build something and nobody uses it, you're not successful. If you build something and people don't get better in what they do, probably not a success. So that's why, right, we need to figure out how can we actually measure, how can you measure and prove back to your organization that the platform that you're building actually delivers success. There's a couple of metrics out there. Again, referencing back the CNCF platform white paper. On the top, the user adoption metrics. Remember, you're building a product. This is simple one-on-one on product engineering. You want to manage and monitor, in the end, the number of active users and how you retain them. Also, as we're building products for developers to deliver better software, you need to look into developer productivity. Right? There's a lot of different measures we have. Look at the space metrics, look at the net promoter score. So these are all more product related and what the product does to the end users. Now, the platforms primarily are there that we build to improve the way we deliver software. So that's why the DORA metrics, the DevOps metrics, the 4 key metrics that has been established for a while: deployment frequency, lead time for change, change failure rate, and time to restore service should be part of the KPIs that you measure, because you want to in the end know, by your users using your platform, are you improving the quality and the speed of delivery? That's really in the end what matters. And if you do so, I think more people will use it, leading to better adoption, leading to better productivity. All right, so what does this mean? How can we get these metrics? How can we make sure we are delivering those KPIs? Well, you need to make your platform observable. Because if your platform itself is not observable, if you don't know what your platform is doing, if your platform is a black box, then you really don't know who is using it, and if they are using it, what they are doing, and if they're not using it, why maybe they're not using it. So this is why observability is a very key point for platform, for delivery and developer experience, right? If you look at the reference architecture again here, you may have different tools now. I just put a couple of logos in here of a potential architecture. What you really need to do is across the whole platform, from the top to the bottom, you need to make sure that you're reaching and enabling SLAs. So your system needs to be available. It needs to be resilient and secure. Available means it has to be available 24/7, or at least when your users try to access it. It has to be resilient. That means if your engineers come back after a long weekend on a Monday morning and all of a sudden they all try to access your system, putting a lot of load on it, it has to be resilient even to that load. And it has to be secure by default. Now, the other thing is, right, if you make it observable, you then in the end obviously get all of these metrics. If you observe how your users are using your platform, then you know active users, NPS space. You can measure the DORA metrics by getting observability into Argo, Flux, Git, and so on. And very important, your platform will run on some type of infrastructure that is not for free, but that also costs money. So you also want to observe the underlying infrastructure and see if there's any potential to optimize it, because otherwise you will potentially build a very expensive platform and people will wander to some other platform that might be cheaper. So observability for the platform is important across the platform. Now, let me give you some of the best practices that we are using. First of all, you want to make sure that all of the components of your platform, whether it's Argo, whether it's Bitbucket, whether it is Harbor, whether it's Crossplane, whatever it is, you need to make sure that these individual components that make up your platform services are available, resilient, and secure. So you can see here some of the dashboards that we put out there to make sure that these systems are really working as expected, because if they don't work as expected, then your users will not be able to use your platform. Think about it. If Argo doesn't work and your developers are checking in code and Argo cannot sync the changes, then they will never get their changes out. Argo is also depending to other systems like Redis, Git. They need to be available. If they are not available, then Argo has an issue. So this is why it's very important that you monitor and observe these components and treat them like your business critical services. You need to have alerts on, you need to have monitors on, you need to have a team that responds in case there's an issue. So availability, resilience, and security for all of your platform services. Also, think about SLAs, adoption and behavior. So what we are using internally is also insights into how are people using the different components. So for instance, the monitoring SLAs, is the system available? And if it's available, then we assume that people will use it. So how are they using it? You need to understand user behavior. There might be certain times during the day where the system is under more stress. So make sure you have the right capacity, and also just monitor how people are using your system. On the bottom, you see some service adoption metrics and usage insights of our container registry, which is really interesting to see which teams are adopting it for which projects. Identify misconfiguration and educate users is also a very important piece. Your platform will provide templates. Your templates might become outdated at some point, so you need to keep them up to date. Maybe your templates are wrong from the beginning. Maybe you don't do a good job in educating people how to use your tool. which in the end will probably lead into errors that then either, will be brought up to your attention by people that are frustrated, or people just wander off and don't use your platform anymore. With observability, you should therefore have an eye on any type of errors that happen, and then either fix the errors in case it's part of the platform, it's part of your template, or educate your users on how to properly use your platform. So identifying misconfiguration is a big, big topic. The next big thing, and this is also where I'm moving really into the efficiency metrics of the platform, what does it do, is measuring application deployments in terms of the DORA metrics. But what I want to stress here is, as you can see here, measure application deployment aware DORA. DORA typically talks about deployment frequency. But if we are just focusing on deploying pods, individual microservices, then we may get a wrong number. Why is this? Because pod deployment doesn't measure if the app gets deployed. A modern app does not consist of a single pod. A modern app contains and consists of multiple pods, multiple microservices, ingresses, databases, network rules, storage. This is why you need to make sure that as you start measuring deployments, you're really focusing on what matters for the business. And that's probably not how often you deploy a single pod, but how often you make changes to your application. And this is why you need to have a deployment or an application deployment aware approach to measuring DORA. Now, one of the CNCF projects that we brought to life is Captain. And Captain is exactly solving that problem by providing observability into your deployments in an application aware fashion. That means we are actually, by installing Captain on your Kubernetes clusters, if you make it part of your platform, automatically creating DORA metrics and also traces that actually show you how long a deployment takes for a particular app, whether 2 changes, 50 changes, or 100 changes involved in deploying a new version. Where was it slow? Where did it break? And in the end, how many of them were actually successful? And the nice thing is Captain is exposing this data through OpenTelemetry and Prometheus, so you can use and look at this data in any type of observability platform you're using. But make sure that you're measuring your DORA metrics application deployment aware and not just focus on pods, because that will give you a wrong impression of what's going on. Now, the last thing I want to do is, I want to highlight here, is you also need to think about observability for your delivery checks for scaling and remediation. What does this mean? Most people think if you're just deploying a pod and Kubernetes tells you the pod is running, that's awesome. Like what you can see here, updated the payment service, it's running, job done, right? Well, the thing is, just because the pod is running doesn't mean that your app is actually healthy. Because as I mentioned before, an app consists of many pods, many ingresses, many routing rules, many networks in between your pods and your end user. Therefore, you always need to make sure that if you make a deployment change, that you also check if the app is really healthy. And again, this is where Captain comes in again, because what we allow you to do with Captain is we allow you to extend the way we measure health of a pod from just pod running, what Kubernetes can see within the Kubernetes cluster, to fetching data from your observability platform, which typically I would assume is going beyond the Kubernetes cluster, hopefully also to your end user. So it measures things like response time, failure rate, but also availability from the outside. And now what's the role of Captain here? Captain is actually standardizing the way how we can pull in data from these observability tools, whether it's Prometheus, Dynatrace, Datadog, New Relic. You see all the different tools out there. And we allow you to pull this data in and then define what is the real measure of health, and then report back on whether your deployment is really healthy or not. Because remember, just pod running doesn't mean that the application is healthy. All right, quick platform observability demo, if time permits. There's a full demo that I did on the Platform Engineering podcast. You can see it on YouTube, where I did a demo with all of these tools that you see here. As to shorten the time here, I just want to tell you, watch the demo. It's I think I went through all of the different use cases. Now, I do though show that this is not just slideware. So what you will see as you walk through the demo, but I'll keep it really brief here, is one of the platforms that I see a lot, using tools like Argo for Git, right? In this case, where I can see how my app is currently doing. Behind the scenes, there's typically a Git repository that was initially created probably by a template where maybe Backstage was used to create this initial template. Now, my app is very simple, but it's also enabled with Captain. So what I have here is a couple of artifacts and CODs that will later be pushed to Kubernetes when I make a change, but they're already pre-configured, some metrics, some SLO providers. I'm pulling in data from Dynatrace, for instance. And so what I can do, I can always validate every time when I deploy that I want to make sure my system is still healthy, and also that my system is available after every deployment, right? You can see so-called Captain evaluation definitions. I have evaluate deployment. So this comes in as a template. I can then modify it to my needs. What else is in here? Very simple, right? As a developer, I would just change my code. And if I have a new version of my build, the only thing I can then do is either manually, I'm just doing it manually here to show you how this would look like. I could say I want to deploy a new version, my version number 5 of my build. Everything, this is standard, right? Developers that work with Kubernetes and containers know all of this. Now, there's a couple of additional things here. My platform is using Captain, as I said, for observability, but also for evaluations, the health evaluations and task execution. So I just add here a couple of additional annotations to let my platform know that pre and post deployment, I want to do some particular checks. And now I'm also just changing here to a different version. I'm changing version back to number 1, commit changes, and overall the app version, I bump it up to v502. That's it, commit my change. And that's really it, that's my platform. Now what do I get? I have my code repo that I just changed that includes all the information about the code and also everything else that my platform should do, all my platform tools. I have Argo here. If I quickly refresh, then I should see that Argo is syncing. Let's see, it's currently in process, right? It's checking and it will deploy my new version. And what I also have is, remember, I talked a lot about observability. So what I do have in the background, I also have my observability platform. Whether this is Grafana or Dynatrace or any other platform that you have, I see what's currently going on. I see how many deployments are happening. And I can actually just see that there's a new trace coming in. It's the trace that just came in here on the 28th of July. This is the time of the recording. Because what's happening for every single deployment, not only do I get the metrics, how many deployments happened over the time, how much time is between the deployments, what's going on right now, I also get traces. Because remember, in case something fails, you want to know what's actually going wrong in your platform. Is Argo slow? Is the problem with the container registry? Didn't Kubernetes find enough resources to deploy your pod? Did my SLOs not work as expected? And therefore, after the deployment, my application, while the pod is healthy, the system is not ready, or the application is not ready. So all of this is within here. All right. So what I would like to show you now is that if you want to see more, go through the full measure the success of IDPs with OpenTelemetry, DORA, SLOs, and so on. I have a full demo ready for you. Now, to wrap it up, we have a big opportunity for platform engineering, because I believe we can enable 10x organizations by simplifying app delivery, simplifying the technology that is used to deliver modern cloud-native apps. Now, my 3 key takeaways to become successful: remember, start with an MVP. Understand your users, what they need, then start with an MVP. Then seek the wisdom of the community. You know, you're not alone out there. There's a lot of people that can give you guidance. Also, feel free to ask me what we do at Dynatrace as well, but also just the whole CNCF community. And then, very important, make your platform observable. That's a key point for me. all right? Because without observability, you don't know who is using your platform, if your platform is running as expected, where things are wrong, where you have to fix things. All right, with this, I hope you got a couple of things out of this talk. Depending on when you watch this, I'm also happy to announce that I'm the host of KCD Vienna. That's the Kubernetes community in Vienna in September 2023. So if you watch this before September, we may still have tickets. So join us there. And with this, I want to say goodbye. Cheers.